Welcome back. So Facebook intervened in some political ads. The social media giant took down a false ad about Senator Lindsey Graham, posted by Political Action Committee, the Really Online Lefty League. The ad alleged Graham supported the Green New Deal. The league claims it wanted to test Facebook's limits. Joining us right now is Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano. God, if you're going to have people testing the limits, you're going to see a lot of fake news.
You are, and they succeeded in testing the limits, and they did so within a week of when Mark Zuckerberg said under oath in a rather aggressive cross-examination by Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez that Facebook would not verify the accuracy of ads. So we don't know if this happened. The ad was patently untrue. The ad said that Senator Lindsey Graham supports the Green New Deal, which is hardly the case.
Right.
But if you look at the ad, it actually sounded like he did. They manipulated his words and his face, so it looked like he was supporting.
That's not right that they can manipulate somebody's voice.
Well, of course, it's not right. The question is it right? It's not right to do the manipulation. The question is it right for Facebook to take it down? If Facebook really knew that it was false, they have the ability to take it down. But where does this stop? Suppose it's an opinion that they disagree with.
Well, here's the distinction. It's not an actual politician. It's a group. It's a political action committee. That's the distinction that Facebook is making. They said because it's a PAC and not a politician, it was eligible for review by the company's third-party fact-checking partners. And Zuckerberg made clear to AOC when she used the example of could she target predominantly black zip codes with misinformation about an election. Zuckerberg said if anyone, including a politician, is saying things that can cause harm, violence, could risk imminent physical harm, or voter or census suppression, then we roll out they have a suppression policy. We will take the content down. So it's not as cut and dried of like you can go on and lie if you're involved in politics in any way, shape, or form.
She asked him, in my opinion, profound questions that go to the heart of free speech, not the heart of the First Amendment, because the First Amendment only restrains the government. The government has nothing to do with this. Facebook is not restrained by the First Amendment because they're not the government. Facebook is restrained by statutes that prevent it from being sued when it posts something that causes harm, and what its customer base wants. It's not restrained by the government.
But Zuckerberg was trying to say to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in terms of if a politician puts up an ad that has falsehoods in it and lies, then that goes to the politician's lack of honesty. And the American people would understand that if a candidate is putting out an ad and it says, I have approved this message and I am Joe Schmo running for Senate, then the American people would know that individual is lying.
So they'll only take something down if a PAC puts it up and not if an individual campaign puts it up.
An organization.
But, Judge, what are the legal... Where is the legal line? If someone puts up something that is knowingly, factually untrue, like Lindsey Graham supports the Green New Deal, which he clearly does not, it's not an opinion.
Right. So absent the statute that says basically, without using this phrase, Facebook is a bulletin board, absent that, if Lindsey Graham wanted to sue them, he would have to show that it was published with knowledge of falsity or with reckless disregard as to whether it was true or false.
You can sue the organization, that put it out there. If somebody's lying about you and disparaging you and hurting you and you can show financial damage, you can sue the pants off of them, right? Yeah. You might not be able to sue Facebook.
Devin Nunes is suing Twitter right now.
Well, Twitter is protected,
and Tulsi Gabbard is suing Google.
I don't know what these cases are about, but for the most
censoring
part,
their conservative conversation. And she says Google censors her.
Google can do all the censoring it wants, and it should lose market share as a result of that censoring. It should not suffer from the heavy hand of the government. That's the law as it is now. Now that law may change. People may take the Dagan McDowell view that who are they to manipulate the marketplace.
Well, how about if the rule that allows them to not be sued is I mean that's the low-hanging fruit, right? If they change that,
it's part of the Communications Decency Act from the mid-1990s that again it was back when it was bulletin boards, but the operator of say a bulletin board or a chat group can't be sued for the post by an individual, and it has been broadened out to include these social media companies.
I'm sure
They could repeat, if Congress could ever do anything, then they could potentially repeal that.
Well, they're all caught up in impeachment, so they're not going to do anything.
Well, Congress is caught up in a lot of things, but if Congress repealed that statute, Facebook would become a self-regulator, and how far would they go? I mean, Lindsey Graham supports the New Deal is patently untrue. Lindsey Graham is whatever, and it's just an opinion. Are they going to censor that because they believe there's no basis for the opinion? The whole concept of censorship is dangerous. These crazy ads should rise or fall in the marketplace of ideas, not at the hands of a censor.
Well, that's what Zuckerberg was trying to say in terms of ads posted by a politician if they contain falsehoods. That's why they want to get out of the way. And it's like, if you choose to lie to the American people, then they will know that.
Right. Yeah.
And you're damaging yourself, not damaging the person you're damaging someone else. But nevertheless, if someone goes on Facebook and takes out an ad about you and it's a lie and it damages you, then you could sue the person who took the ad out.
Correct.
Maybe not Facebook, but maybe their pockets aren't as
correct.
deep.
And then the Times Against Sullivan standard would come in if the person doing the suing is a public figure.
Judge, great insights. Thank you.
Pleasure,
Judge Andrew
guys.
Napolitano there. We'll take a break.